welcome back to my channel, and as you can tell by the title, in today's video I'm going to be reading Katabasis by RF Kuang. This book was actually recently released. I believe it was released in September. Was it August? I have seen so many opinions and thoughts on this book, ranging from absolutely loving it to absolutely hating it to middle of the road, and I'm very curious because I want to see what I think of the book and see what my own opinions are. Obviously I'm a bit of an optimist, so I really want to end up loving this book, but I'm not 100% sure that. So I think that's cool. It kind of reminds me of Babel in terms of like languages as a medium. I just hope that it improves, and that's what I want out of life. Is like I just want to be smart as possible. I feel like you can make someone unlikable, but like I feel like it's a point where it's like I don't want to like her. Alice is not a good person. I don't have to say that. It's very clear. It's just hard to read. I know that's very nitpicky, but like that's just a thought. A little bit of background on the book, as far as I know it, based on what I've heard online so far, is that the story follows two students, Alice and Peter, and they are at Cambridge University and they're studying magic, and they have a professor who ends up in hell accidentally or somewhat through Alice's actions, and so in hopes of making it in the world of magic and needing their professor's recommendation, Alice and Peter decide to go into hell to save their professor and their own futures at the same time. So far what I've heard about it is that it's dark academic descent into hell, and I just like the idea of it. It just sounds interesting. Up to this point I have read 2 RF Kuang books, so this will be my 3rd one. I've read Babel and Yellowface, and I definitely enjoyed Babel more than Yellowface. I gave them both 4 stars. I think that in different ways they reached that conclusion. Like I enjoyed Babel's writing more than I did for Yellowface, but I feel like Yellowface's political discourse was very important. Also Babel's, but I feel like I got to 4 stars for different reasons. I'm not going to say like she's my favorite author or anything, but I do enjoy her writing, especially when she takes her time, I feel like. In Babel especially, her writing was amazing, and it's one of my favorite books. I enjoyed reading it so much. And to talk about the discourse on the book so far, I really don't want to let this, what I've heard, affect me, but I've heard that some people don't like the beginning, and some people say that it gets better as it goes on. Some people say there's a blocky dialogue. I've heard that the pacing is strange. Sometimes it feels like the story hasn't officially started. Yeah, I've heard a lot of things about this book. I really want to go into this with an open mind, and I don't want those opinions to affect me, but I mean, this is the internet. I've heard certain things already, so I'm just going into it with an open mind and hoping that I enjoy this, because I'm unfortunately excited about this book. And I was recently traveling and I got this Canadian edition. It has this amazing illustration, and when I saw the UK versus the US version of the book, I was more drawn to this edition. So when I saw it traveling, I knew that I was not going to be able to get this here at home, so I definitely picked it up, and I really like it. I just love the illustration. I love the perspective. I love the papers. I love the color, the green. It's so pretty. I mean, the UK edition is also quite nice with the black and white, but I think this is just a little bit more up my alley. While we're here, I think I'll just read the blurb for this book. Alice Law has only ever had one goal: to become the brightest minds in the field of magic. She has sacrificed everything to make it that a reality. Her pride, her health, her love life, and most definitely her sanity. All to work with Professor Jacob Grimes at Cambridge, the greatest magician in the world. That is, until he dies in a magical accident that could possibly be her fault. Grimes is now in hell, and she's going in after him because his recommendation could hold her very future in his now incorporeal hands. And even death is not going to stop the pursuit of her dreams, nor will the fact that her rival Peter Murdoch has come to the very same conclusion, with nothing but the tales of Orpheus and Dante to guide them, enough chalk to draw draw the pentagrams necessary for their spells, and the burning desire to make all the academic trauma mean anything. They set off across hell to save a man they don't even like. But hell is not like the storybooks say. Magic isn't always the answer, and there's something in Alice and Peter's past that could forge them into the perfect allies or lead to their doom. So with that being said, I'm interested, I'm intrigued. I hope it's as dark and intriguing as I want it to be. So I'm going to read the first chapter now, and I'll just catch up and give my initial thoughts on the book. So we'll see how that goes. So I've just finished reading the first chapter of Katabasis, and I have to say that I really like it so far. I really like it. And one thing that I like about RF Kuang is that I feel like she's an incredibly intelligent woman, and she stuffs her books filled with like so many references of like books and people and moments in history that whenever I read her works, or at least her fantasy books, I feel like I'm coming into contact with moments and theories and things that I never would have come into contact, and it's like making me smarter as a person. And that's what I want out of life, is like I just want to be smart as possible. And I just think that her books help me reach that goal, and I like that about her writing. And I know some people don't like that, but I really like it. I have a couple of tabs, so I thought that we'd go through them. My first tab is talking about the King Yama the Merciful, who's the ruler of the underworld. I didn't know that. So now I have someone that I can go and research and understand more about. And then now they're talking about Alice and the pentagram that she draws, and she calls it Sue's basic transportative pentagram with Satya's modifications. And another thing that I found really interesting was like the pentagrams have the requisite loops, but they also have languages that are part of the pentagrams, different languages, so like Greek, Sanskrit, Chinese. So I think that's cool. It kind of reminds me of Babel in terms of like languages as a medium. I'm not really sure how they work in terms of the pentagrams, but super cool. And another part that I thought was really cool, I just read Song of Achilles, so I have been very acquainted with the choice that Achilles was faced with of either choosing glory and a short lifetime or long lifetime of and aging and just living a mediocre life. And I thought that was really interesting and nice that she brought up the choice that Achilles faced. And another thing, like requisite loops, like logic, things like that are coming up in this book. I'm really enjoying everything that has to do with that. I think it's so cool. As someone who studied computer science and has done things like graphs and loops and things like that, like cyclic graphs and things like that, like honestly it's my language. You speaking my language, I really enjoy it. But one thing that I didn't really like was the part where she was talking about how they've done research on how men's voices are better for incantations. I don't know if that's just like the mini feminist in me, but I'm just like, I don't know, it's kind of weird. I feel like if I'd be okay and like accepting that if it had a bit more explanation as to why men's voices are better. I just don't want to take it at like face value, like, oh, men are better witches and warlocks than women are. Like, I feel like that sort of mindset could hinder her. Another thing with like the chalk, how the chalk is made of like shells of ancient animals. I thought that was cool. And like how the chalk has the power to like disintegrate flesh if it's not in a complete pentagram. Like the chalk contains intrinsic power within itself. The chalk does the work in terms of the analytical magic. I thought that was really cool. Another thing that I thought was cool was like the mention of like postmodernist and post-instructionalist magic, that like she says that it does the opposite of what they want and spells that do nothing at all. Like, I just think it's so funny in terms of like, also as someone who has a little bit of history in art, things like postmodernism, things like Dadaism, like literally putting a freaking urinal in a gallery and saying this is art. And I loved the explanation of the Sortis's paradox, like the heaps of sand. I loved that. Like I love just logic and stuff like that. It's so cool to me. I'm like having a great time. We obviously found out that she had played a part in killing her supervisor, and for me, one thing that really stood out was like, how is she able to believe that she's gonna get him back? Like his body was put into buckets, they had a funeral. Like at that point I didn't believe, but then when she started to explain that magic is simply the act of telling lies, and telling lies so well that they become truths, and that really just puts into perspective why she's able to go into hell. I really like that, the idea of like lies as truth. That for me is just like, I don't know, I love it. It's just perfect. Yeah, so I think you can see from like my very bright big smile that I'm enjoying this book so far. I really hope I continue to enjoy it. It just feels like it's so up my alley. I hope it continues to be that way. So I'm gonna continue reading, and yeah, let's see where it goes. So I'm back, and I am officially 100 pages into Katabasis. Barely a dent. And I just thought that I'd give a quick little vibe check because it has been a couple of chapters. I'm now going to be going into chapter 7, so it's been like 6 chapters since I last gave my thoughts and opinions. Yeah, we definitely have a lot of stuff going on in this book. It's definitely nothing like I've ever read before. We have descended into hell, and we're just watching Alice and Peter confront the task at hand of traversing through hell in order to find their professor. I have enjoyed a lot of things about the book. I've enjoyed a lot of the references to philosophers and thinkers and mathematics and logic, and it can make me a smarter person, and that's like my goal. I think there's like a trend online where people are like, when you just want to be like disgustingly educated, and I'm like, I want to be disgustingly educated. So this book is good because it's almost like an encyclopedia of like smart people things, and I love that. But I do have things that are like irking me. I feel like the book is quite long. It is long, and we do have like interactions with certain individuals in hell. Like say we introduced to graduates, and they were at Cambridge, and they felt the need to maintain that status above reincarnation. And I thought that that interaction was really interesting, and I felt like it could have brought some insight into Alice, because Alice is quite pretentious, and I don't know, RF Kuang does a lot of work with like characters that are not the most likable. At least in Yellowface, that was my experience, and I think that was the point. But I think with Alice's character, it's a lot more grey in terms of like whether or not we're supposed to like her. I mean, it is harder to read a book about an insufferable character, a character that is classist, a character that is mean. I feel like you can make someone unlikable, but like I feel like it's a point where it's like, I don't want to like her. And so when she suffers things like misogyny and other things being ignored, I obviously do feel bad for her from the standpoint of her being a woman, but it's also like hard to empathize completely with her. She's not a nice person, and that is hard. And I feel like that encounter with the shades that were Cambridge students in the past, that was a moment that could have helped Alice like let go of her like academic pressure and be more mindful of like, say, inclusivity in the world. I don't know. I feel like that's a good moment for character growth, and I just hope we didn't get to that moment solely just to have dirt on Professor Grimes. I hope that that is a learning moment from her. But I feel like in this book we have a lot of interactions with shades, especially, that are almost hollow, in the sense that I don't feel like they're going anywhere. Like when we were in the Library of Pride, they had an interaction with the shade who was crying on the floor, And I guess that was a good way to bring in the character of the Cambridge man custodian more. I felt like, what happened to that shade? What happened to his struggle to get through? Like, was he just there to, I feel like we're having a lot of moments of interaction which could go deeper, could push the story forward in a way, but we're just kind of like using them for nothing. That's my issue. I'm just like, I wish we could go deeper with the people that we introduce. I hope they have more purpose. So even though I enjoy a lot of the academic themes, I feel like the story is not gripping me as much as I would like, which really hurts because I want it to be gripped by the story, but I just hope that it improves. I just feel like the book maybe could have used a bit more time, because we get a lot of concepts like the academia and the Alice's character and Peter's character and hell itself. We have a lot of concepts and things that are floating in space, but I feel like they're not working all together as a cohesive story. I wish that was the case. That's all. So that's my 100-page update. I'm going to continue reading and I hope that it will be better. I'm enjoying it, but I want more cohesion. So I am back again. It is a new day and I have read up until the 25% point of the book, around 25%, and I just want to talk about what I'm feeling so far, how things are going, but I think all of that good jazz. So this book is, like I mentioned, packed with academic references, and I really have been enjoying that. I think in my last update I was a bit more questioning the direction that we were going. I felt like things were not adding up as much, but something has actually happened in this last chapter which actually intrigued me and is pulling me in. I think, I don't know, these past 2 chapters have been a lot more interesting for me, and I feel like the story is moving in a more cohesive way and I'm enjoying it a little bit more. I think those first chapters were just so tough to get through. I don't know why. Well, they weren't tough to get through, but like they weren't the most interesting, I have to say. And I keep on like picking up Goodreads, like going on Goodreads and like reviewing things, and I'm pretty sure I've spoiled quite a bit of the book for myself. I don't know why I do this, but I saw online like people were like, well, being boring is the point of the book, and I just think that you should never write a book for it to be boring. That's all. I feel like the things that were good are still continuing, like the academic nature, it's still continuing. I'm enjoying that, and the pacing has picked up, which I'm enjoying. I hope that it continues to be just quicker paced, because I'm gonna do a spoiler section. Okay, so now we're gonna get into spoilers, because I have so many thoughts. The first thought is, it's a bit nitpicky, I know, but it's like the name Bone Things. I don't know, why does it seem so weird to call them Bone Things? It just seems like very juvenile. Like it's just like you're in hell, okay, and there are these scary chalk bounded, magically conjured, no flesh or blood or skin or fur, just bone and chalk and claws and teeth and all of these things, sockets, eye sockets, the scariest things you can imagine, and then you call them Bone Things. That just seems like such an afterthought, like Bone Things. Oh, it's a bone thing. That sounds so... It doesn't create the atmosphere of like fear, which we need to have, because they are vicious animals and they're like attacking them. So I don't know, I just don't like the name Bone Things. I know it's a nitpicky thing, but like, another thing was like, Alice talks a lot about the sacrifices that she takes or makes in order to be an academic, and some of the things that she sacrifices include her time, money. She doesn't earn money, her mental health, her sanity. She gives everything of herself, her hobbies, and also she went into this whole little thing about like how academics need to only nourish their brains and how pleasure for pleasure's sake is base, like it's lowly, and how academics only need to think of productivity insofar as it makes them a better academic, which is an interesting point to get into. But she then starts talking about food and how she doesn't eat food, and when she doesn't eat, she feels like she's closer to this, what does she call, like this like academic bliss that you can receive. She's never gotten to that place, but like how when her stomach is empty, her mind is clear, and she doesn't eat for like the whole day until midnight, and that makes her proud of herself. And I think that that language and verbiage, it just is a bit, like it's just a bit weird. It's just a bit triggering. It could be triggering. Obviously Alice is a character that has a lot of flaws, and personally I don't enjoy her character. I find her to be very classist. I find her to be mean, pretentious. Like, I feel like she would have been in Pride, because she mentioned a moment with Grimes where she was at this party, and she like at another school, and she mentioned that their school had like an inferior condition to theirs in like a very braggadocious and prideful way. And it's like, Alice is not a good person. I don't have to say that. It's very clear. There have also been amazing moments of learning, and I feel like the writing is improving a bit, but I am a bit disappointed with this book, I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna continue. I hope that it goes in the direction that I hope, so let's just continue. I am a little bit further with the book. Not that much further. I didn't get that much reading done today, but I just wanted to talk about something that I have picked up in the book. Okay, so there's this point where she says, oh, it's not really a spoiler. I don't think it is. Maybe. None of them could afford a matching dinnerware set or proper table or even linens, but still they were proud to pass around the cheap bottles of port they'd found at Sainsbury, because it was a luxury to have port at all. And this is Alice reminiscing on her time in graduate school when they would have dinners at their homes, and brings this up a lot, that like they're graduate students and they don't have money, and they're like struggling and they don't get money, and they work so hard and they never get compensated. And I believe that part of that is true, but I'm also thinking like, we're talking about Cambridge, Yale, Cornell, all of these, Oxford as well. Those are the types of institutions that we're talking to. And let's be honest, like a lot of these graduate students at Cambridge and Yale and Oxford, Mrs. Kuang herself, and this is not a personal attack, are wealthy. So it is hard to sit back and be like, oh my gosh, Cambridge students are so broke, they don't even have money for a bottle of wine, I mean, it's pushing this constantly, like, we're so broke, but like, let's not forget that the amount of like nepotism and classism that exists in especially these very, I don't say Ivy League, but like elite institutions. It's like, imagine saying that every single Oxford, I mean, they probably do not get paid much, but they don't need to get paid much because they have privilege of like money. And I feel like that part is being glazed over, and even someone like Peter is like placed into this box of like, oh, he has no money. Well, it hasn't been explicitly said, but like he's kind of included in that. And it's like, we all don't have money. We all are struggling financially. And I think that in the context of the universities that we're discussing, and also because Alice only seems to have any sort of sympathy or empathy for people who go to a select number of schools, like I'm sure if she was discussing graduate students from other institutions, because of the character that we have seen displayed to us, I don't think she would be that forgiving, and she wouldn't be empathetic at all to any of their struggles, I don't think. And that's why it's just hard to read. I know that's very nitpicky, but like, that's just a thought. It's hard. It's so hard. And then, yeah, but I'm going to continue almost halfway, fighting for halfway. Let's see how it goes. Hi, it is the next morning and I'm in bed. I was just so tired last night. Still reading Katabasis. It's taking me a while, but that's because I just have a lot of work commitments, and it is during the working week. And so when you get home, you're not like there's other things that you want to do as well. So I only sometimes get to read a limited amount of time after work, and even before work I don't really have time to read. With all that being said, I'm about halfway through the book, and I thought that we could go through some of my thoughts. I feel like we've been focusing a bit more on trying to get to the end goal of the book, like what our characters are now going to be officially working towards. And yeah, it's interesting that we've only get that now. I mean, I feel like obviously the goal is to get Professor Grimes, or at least the stated goal is to get to Professor Grimes, but I feel like we haven't been focused on that except for constantly questioning what he has done wrong. So yeah, I think also in some parts we lost our goal, but now we have discovered something else that is going to help them get to their goal. But it's like they also have a desire to escape, so it's like we are balancing multiple interests at once, and it's unclear which one is truly the most important. Are we still focused on getting Grimes, because that's feeling like it's taken a back burner? Or are we focused on getting out of hell first? Or are we focused on getting the true contradiction? Or are we focused on doing the soul swapping? So it's like there's a lot of different things, and I feel like their priorities are not, at least to me, very clear. And another thing that has been showing up is the characterization, particularly of Ellis, because we don't really get, Peter just remains very vague. And insofar as his actions, what he does, that's as much characterization that we get from him. And then flashbacks, which I know people say that flashbacks have been taking them out of the story. I've been enjoying the flashbacks. I think they're more interesting than them actually being in hell. But Alice's character in these more recent chapters has been revealing that her motivations are more guided by the desire to think and to be an intellectual and to discovery. But all of that seems so incongruent with how she's presented herself over these past chapters, as pretentious, as someone who was I need to get a job, very much caring about recommendation and position and leaving her mark on society, glory, some might say. And I don't know if Alice is changing the tune and saying I only care about thinking and discovery. It just doesn't feel believable. It doesn't feel like there was a moment of shifting in her where she is revealing more inner truth and foregoing all those other things that she said, because it seems like she's just kind of trying to paint Alice in a new light that doesn't fit with how she's portrayed herself. And I struggle with that because I don't believe what she's saying. I don't know who Alice is. And the pacing is interesting because rather than specifically focusing on what they're doing, I feel like we've been focusing a lot on character study, so much of her inner monologue, and yeah, even it's just a lot. I feel like we haven't been moving as quickly as you would think through hell. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but that is another gripe of mine, is I feel like they're not getting involved in hell. They just move through the courts and they witness stuff and then they just step out, which I would like them to be more interested. But I guess now they're going to be searching for a true contradiction, which in my mind is is that a theory? Is that a place? Is that a person? Is that a thing? It's just not clear. There's just a lot of vagueness in this book. I know people are saying she over-explains and stuff like that, but in this book, I feel like in terms of the plot and where we're going and what we're doing, things don't feel clear. So far, I feel like I can say my expectations are not being met, unfortunately. And I love Babel, so this is tough for me. I just feel like this book could have used just more work to make it more concise and coherent. It really could have. Because either that or just I would like a serious understanding of why RF Kuang places Alice and makes him so misogynistic and classist and unlikable. I don't know why she did that, and I wonder why she did that. Like, what was she trying to make us think about? Because it's tough, and I think it might be too early considering it is only halfway, but I just feel like this book is just not gonna be one of my favorites. Yeah, I feel like I need to just focus more on reading things that have not a good reputation. I do still want to read new things, but maybe just the first few reviews or thoughts would be more consistent with what I would like. But I feel like I already decided to read this because I enjoyed Babel. So now I'm going to get into some spoilers for the book. I think it's interesting that we don't have insight into Peter, because even when it comes to how he feels about Alice betraying him or his feelings towards Alice, I'm so interested in knowing what he thinks. And I would like to just get more insight into him, because I feel like we're halfway through and we don't really know much about his character other than he's incredibly smart. And that's another thing, like, I think we had a moment where Alice and Peter were on Elspeth's, and Elspeth informed them that they need blood to conjure spells, and they wanted to do a spell of duplication. And Alice mentioned that that spell required a lot of mathematics that she did not want to get into. But then, like, as it was put, Peter just did it one and done super quick. Like, that mathematics which RF Kuang alluded to was never shown to us, so it felt very... That's just one moment where I'm like, I wish we got more showing, less telling. Yeah, that's just a thought. I've heard that this book is a romance, but I feel like there isn't much romance so far. I mean, there's just a lot of, like, miscommunication happening between the characters, arguments where he isn't revealing why he wrote her name in the book about the spell to change souls. I'm not using the correct verbiage, but I hope it's still clear what I'm referring to. I feel like Alice's character, like I said earlier, it's hard for me to understand, because there are moments when she is vulnerable and more open to admitting that her mind is going through something after getting her pentagram tattoo, where she feels blame for Grimes and Peter, where she like almost gets close to vulnerability, but then she kind of skips over it and just goes back to her ruthless nature, which is a bit confusing. I don't fully grasp her character. It doesn't feel like a mask that she's wearing in terms of protection. It more so feels like inconsistency. Something that I like is like the idea of like, you shouldn't believe your own lie. You need to hold the truth and the untruth at the same time as a magician, or else you could get swallowed up by it. I really enjoy that concept, and I think it's really beautiful and interesting, and I hope we get more. And that's another thing, like, I wish we got more about magic in this book. Like, that's what I want more of. Like, what are the rules of the magic? How can the magic be applied in hell? You know, I feel like the things that we are getting are not what I would want. I think like now we're moving into this realm of a true contradiction being our main goal, because it almost feels like it's coming out of nowhere, this contradiction idea. I don't know, it's hard for me to be invested in it. Like, I thought the goal was getting to Grimes, but now we're faced with another element of it. That's why I feel like this world is very vague. Our goals, our motivations it feels like everything is just popping up in a very incongruent way, and I feel like I'm not latching on to anything. It's just, I struggle so much with Alice's character. Like, she really has so much internalized misogyny, especially with Elspeth, and not just with Elspeth, but with the other interaction she had with the other female researcher who is trying to warn her about Grimes. You think that she is maybe growing from her experience in hell, but she still continues to hate other women who are researchers. And it's very difficult to see. And just another logic thing, like, I love the idea of happiness being comparative and not absolute. I love that. I love that they got these questions of like the riddle of wine paradoxes or torture paradoxes. Like, I think that those are just good things to think about in terms of just intellectually. I'm just happy the book still has the logic parts, because that's really what's helping me along. End of the spoilers. All in all, I'm struggling with Alice's character. RF Kuang's characterization of Alice feels very unbelievable, and I don't know what to believe when it comes to Alice. Like, is she pretentious and blood hungry, or is she simply seeking academic truth? Only the former is bringing true for me. But let's continue. I think right now my goal is just to get to the end of the book to form my own coherent opinion on it. It is later on in life, and I am reading Katabasis still. I'm probably like 75% through, and why don't we just talk about how it's going? Honestly, I'm gonna be really honest. I'm not enjoying it, and it's really tough for me to continue, but I'm gonna finish this book. I feel like I haven't struggled this much with a book in a long time, and what makes it even harder is that it's 500 pages. I mean, we did not need 500 pages, and I'm not even exaggerating. I don't know how many times we've had Alice defend Grimes, or talk about her eating disorder, or battle with the thoughts that she has, but not grow from it. It's so much of a character study. Like, it is very much character driven, this book, and it's just not hitting the points for me. And this last 25% has been not good at all, and very little has been memorable or just worth, I feel like, what I've put into it. And I just find myself wanting to be done. I want to be done as soon as possible, please. So I'm just gonna get into the specifics, the spoilers, because I feel like I don't have anything to say. I'm clearly drained. Let's get into the specifics. So we meet Elizabeth, and she's a character who is an ex-student of Grimes, and it's even like I don't even care about anything that's going on. I don't even know why. It's crazy. I noticed that she said that Elizabeth called the bone things, and I know it is such a gripe, is the most tiny thing, but it's like, how did Elizabeth know to call them bone things? Are we assuming that it's an established term? Because bone things seem so random and just not well placed, in my opinion. So it's odd that they both call them bone things without ever having discussed the name bone things. So we get this moment in the book where Alice and Peter's main conflict is the fact that Peter had written about the spell to swap souls and bodies, and he wrote Alice's name in his notes, and we just have them on so many occasions just almost touching on this meat of the conversation, but then they just kind of like prolong it. They prolong having their deep and honest moment with each other, which is just like, I don't read a lot of romance, so I'm not a romance expert. I don't see a lot of romance between them. They barely communicate, and later on they do have their tender moment where Peter sacrifices his life for her, but there's really nothing romantic in their connection. I don't feel any sort of warm feelings towards Alice and Peter together as a concept. They just seem like two people walking around not talking to each other. But that's just me. Another thing was like the Esther trap. We were stuck in that trap for multiple chapters, just in the trap, not exploring hell, not doing anything, just in a trap. And I didn't like that. I just felt like the story just is not moving. Like multiple chapters, including flashbacks, just with them in the trap, and I just felt like I was losing my mind. I needed anything to happen. It was so difficult. I just feel like we constantly are pushed on this message of like, Alice wanted to be an exception. Alice knew that Grimes was like strange, but she wanted like to challenge that, to be the exception, to be the one, the excitement, like the one who actually survives Grimes, And I just feel like we understand that. We understand that that's what she wanted. You don't have to tell us another anecdote of how Alice wanted to be the exception, of how Alice knew what she knew, and how she just wanted to get his approval. I just feel like we're being beaten over the head with Alice's motivations. It's really not enjoyable. And on Alice again, because I feel like this book is just 90% Alice's character study, or at least 70%. And it's like, imagine character studying such a difficult character. It's not fun. At least make it a fun character study. And fun doesn't mean they have to be perfect or have perfect views or opinions, but I just can't even describe it. Like, Alice is just not a fun character. And just particularly in her, I don't even know what to call it, like, desire to be the cool girl, it's just really tired and it never goes anywhere. And she never grows or changes or has any realizations. It's just hard to constantly listen to the same thing. Constantly having to listen to her defend Professor Grimes's character, it just gets tiring. And that's what I feel. I feel tired. I have no desire to read another line of this book. This book is torturing me. I myself feel as if I'm going to hell. Another thing is, like, I don't understand how she's going to have his flesh in a bucket and then imprint his soul onto that rotting flesh. Like, that's not organic material that will be able to sustain itself for any long period of time. I mean, wouldn't it decay? I just don't understand the concept of her plan. And that's another thing, was like, in the beginning of the book, we are told that Alice has been preparing to go into hell, doing all of this research, all of this preparation for weeks upon weeks since Grimes has passed away. But now we get to this point where she doesn't know what she's going to do next, and like, Alice starts losing motivation. She doesn't know why she's there. She doesn't know what to do. She knows she has her little catechism, her ladder that she climbs, and I love that image of it. I feel like it's fallen away in these last few chapters, but I like the idea of, like, having a ladder of, like, I am Alice Law and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. Like, I love that. I thought that was cool. Either way, Alice is losing motivation for what she's doing in hell, and I am losing motivation for reading the book. I'm struggling with Peter's motivations for going into hell. Yeah, it has not been a good book for me, and I'm hoping that I make it through the end. Let's hope that I do. So it is the next day, and I am officially 100 pages, well, less than 100 pages out from finishing, and I thought that I could do a bit more of a stopping when I'm reading and, like, just giving little updates, because I need motivation to get through this. And yeah, where I'm at currently, Alice has run out of Diz, the city, and she's lost the light, and the landscape is changing, so she does not know where she's gonna go. She doesn't know what she's gonna do, and I also don't know what's gonna happen. So let's continue with this book. So I've just finished up with chapter 29 and I'm starting on chapter 30, and chapter 30 starts out with Alice meeting up with Gradus. So I'm guessing we're going to assume that Gradus followed Alice out back into hell. We didn't even know that he knew she ran away. Was he watching her, tracking her? Did he see her? I mean, maybe because she was, like, furiously running through out of Diz, he did see her and follow her, but Alice mentioned that she has been walking for days at this point as well. So yeah, maybe it will be explained how Gradus found her and why and what he wants from her. But also in chapter 29, Alice, I feel like it existed to increase her renewed fervor for life, which I felt like we have already covered that when the shade fell into the Leith and she was like, I don't want to die. But I feel like this chapter, once again, bringing up the Kripkes and the jaguar cat that she encounters, I feel like maybe it was in a way also to tackle her eating disorder or just, like, complicated relationship with food, because now she's actually eating food. Like, this is probably the first time we've seen Alice eat proper food that isn't lambast bread, and she kind of does it in a very devouring way. And it makes sense because she has been traveling for days and days, but it kind of pushes her to want to kill something, which kind of feels very out of the blue. I don't know. I feel like when she left Diz, she was like, she doesn't want to die. And now she's like, I want to kill something. She didn't kill the cat, but she did butcher it. Maybe it's related to her butchering, or is it related to her killing Grimes? Anyways, I am still confused, but I'm going to continue reading. Let's see how it goes. So I am now at the beginning of chapter 31, and in chapter 30 we established that the person that Alice wants to kill is the Kripkes, and that is all fine and well, but I feel like I wish she had drawn in more that motivation of why she wants to kill them. It's instead of just being like, I'm like pumped up, I want to kill someone, I want to kill something. I feel like if she had drawn more on like avenging Peter, because in this whole time of like, I want to kill the Kripkes, she has not once mentioned Peter and how them murdering him upsets her. Like, apparently she loved him so much, but like she doesn't even want to have like a vengeance arc. Or maybe it's just like obvious and it shouldn't even be mentioned. But I feel like that sentiment would add a bit more value to the scene. That's just my thought. Yeah. So we're gonna continue on. I'm just like counting down the pages at this point. Hi, it is a little bit later in the day and I have finished Katabasis. I do have thoughts on it. I'll start out with my rating. I feel like that will give a good backdrop to how I felt overall about the book. So I gave it 2.5 stars. That doesn't sound good, but I really struggled with this book, and one of my criticisms is that I feel like it was way too long. Way too long. There are a lot of aspects of Alice's character. First of all, in a lot of moments I feel like this was more a character study, and not just a character study on its own, but a character study that is looking upon societal problems such as what it is to be a woman in the 80s and women in academia, things of that nature. And it's all kind of brought up through Alice's character and her inner monologue and her own thoughts and her experiences. There are a lot of flashbacks in this book, but honestly, I just feel like it wasn't cohesive enough. And I know I don't have the most detailed exploration, but I feel like for me, a barometer that I use when I'm thinking about books that I've read is just, is it believable? And it didn't feel believable. I can understand the comparison to Alice in Wonderland. To be honest, it's been a while since I haven't actually read the book, but it's been a while since I've watched the movie. But I do think about like the idea of falling into a hole and then like trudging through and meeting all of these different characters. But I think that where Katabasis is a bit different is that throughout all of Alice and Peter's journeys, I feel like our reason or thread or ladder, if you will, is not consistent, and it almost feels like we lose the sense of the plot. And of course, our thoughts on the true reasoning of why Alice and Peter are in hell gets revealed to us, and then also re-revealed, and it's a lot. It's very confusing and all over the place, inconsistent in my opinion. How about I just do spoilers, because I'm not really good at this. Obviously, once Alice and Peter descend into hell, we are told that Alice is going into hell in order to get her professor back so she can succeed in academia. And it's kind of vaguely mentioned ever so often that she does not like the man, but she needs him, right? Then later on, it is revealed to us that Alice simply wanted to put Grimes under Enrico's, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Enrico's spell in order to have his very limited decaying body pieces have them hold his soul, and for him to suffer, maybe not in eternity, but for as long as she could keep him alive. Okay, and then as we get closer to the last chapter, Grimes also mentions that he had been haunting Alice in order to convince her to come to hell. So it's like there's a lot of different motivations and reasonings, which as we're going through the book, it falls away in so many ways. In this book, we go on so many different side quests, like once Alice gets to the 8th court and in the city of Diz, when she meets the rebels who never want to die, things like that. Like, I'm not saying it didn't add to the story. I think it was mostly existing in order to bring more color into the idea of hell. But it's like at that point, Alice was not caring about Grimes, was not caring about Peter. She was just kind of like moving through hell because hell was there to be moved through. And it's hard because it's like, found myself being like, why are we here? What's the motivation? The story felt very loose. It's hard to pick something up when you don't even feel like what you're reading has any motivation, any life force. You know, like how chalk is the distillation of years of living energy. This book was lacking living energy, in my opinion. It's really sad because I started the book out absolutely loving it. I loved the first chapter. I loved the way that the logic kind of intertwined with what we were doing, but as time went on, it just felt like we were not getting anything that was creative and an original work. It was just like something that was sort of like a puppet stuffed with different references and more references and more references. It's like we would have a beautiful moment that occurs, and then it would be Aristotle said, and then we'd have a nice moment, and it would be like, this one philosopher said this about stars, and some of those, you know, philosophical points and references and things like that did matter, but it's like the one about Euclid and like parallel lines meeting at infinity, that was kind of brought up towards the end again, and I liked that. I thought it was funny, and it did play into the story, but it almost felt like there were moments where you had something happen in the book, but it had to be reinforced by a philosopher, by a research point. It's like, you know, when you're writing an academic paper and you can't just have a sentence, you have to like give your reference for that sentence. And I felt like we had a fictional book which had references for every single moment, and that was just not fun. And it's not because I don't like academic readings and I'm not smart. Well, maybe I'm not smart, but it's like I wish the author of the book that I'm reading has enough confidence in themselves to create a story and not need to substantiate it based on someone else's words or actions already. So then I know people say like, oh, RF Kuang wants to show you that she's so smart and she's so researched. And I don't know, I'm not sure. I don't want to comment on her character and call her names because I read Babel and I loved it. It's just such an amazing book. This book just fell flat for me. You know, I felt like it just lacked direction and it wasn't believable. And Alice's character, I felt like she realized the same things over and over and over again, which was tough. You know, I mean, if you have a realization, I feel like it should be impactful. And the things that she was realizing was not related to Grimes at all. Towards the end, still to the end, she would defend Grimes, and by the time she kind of was in that repeat situation of his hands on her, that's when she realized. And I just felt like, why did it take that moment happening again? Like, why couldn't it have been so many people that told her, the Elizabeth or Peter? Like, how many times did Peter tell Alice, Grimes is not a great guy, he's not as good as he seems? Even when she knew that Grimes had stolen Peter's work, she still was like, no, he never lied, he's not that bad. That's, you know, like she never fully came to that belief. And then when in the last chapter, or close to the last chapter, she does, it doesn't ring true. It's not believable. Another thing, I wish this book had more descriptions of the magic, because yes, it's all fine and well to say, oh, I'm going to write an exchange pentagram and that's going to like take his soul out of this soul and like they're going to swap and things like that. But I wish I knew the mechanisms of it, because that's something that I would be extremely interested in. Is just like the logic, the theorems, the algorithms, the maths. Like, give us that sort of knowledge and background into the magic system, because it does feel vague. I don't want to ramble anymore. All in all, not my favorite read, very difficult to get through, and I hate to say it, the disappointment. There's still so much that I've learned from this book and that I'm going to research and look into, but overall as a story, it did not hit the mark for me. This doesn't mean that I will never read The Puppy War or anything, but for now I'm gonna take a very long break from RF Kuang. I think I just need a break, and I need to just from hype, you know, let's just read things that I feel will more align with my tastes. But you never know until you read it. So, but anyway, thank you so much for watching, and even though it didn't go the way that I wanted, I feel like every opportunity to read is a good opportunity, and I'm grateful to have been able to have read this book. And and I will see you in my next video. Bye.
If it's all the same.